Okay, good evening. It's 6 p.m. on Monday, December 18th, 2023, and it's my honor to call the Groton Board of Education's special regular meeting to order. Our first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Mead, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the next order of business are comments from citizens regarding agenda items and other subjects of concern that lie within the jurisdiction of the Board of Education. This is the portion of the agenda where the board welcomes comments from citizens. Each presentation should be limited to 5 minutes or less. Citizens should, if possible, submit written comments. Presentation should be related to matters pertinent to Groton. Board members may only ask questions in order to clarify the speaker's presentation and cannot respond during the comment of citizens portion of the board meeting. Citizens should state their names and addresses for the record. And do we have anyone signed up?
I don't have anyone signed up.
Okay, is
I'm
there anyone who would
looking
like
to
to
see-
speak?
Good evening. Portia Bordelon, 24 Jefferson Drive. For full disclosure, I am a Groton Town Councilor, but today I'll be speaking as a citizen. First, I want to thank all the new board members for taking a chance and running for election, as it's very tough. It's a lot of things can be said that are very negative, and it can be very frustrating at times, but it's very rewarding. And all the returning Board of Ed members, thank you for your service as well. First, I just want to thank, I know I had reached out a while back to Sam Kirkpatrick about a fill station out in front of the gym, and that is in place now. So a water fill station for athletes versus going down to the hall for our guests. I want to thank you for that. I did receive a lot of calls as a parent with concerns about the weather this morning. I too had those concerns. I felt that we were late on the draw. Again, I speak for myself. Late on the draw, I'm calling that. And if we had a 2-hour delay, it would have been the thick of the storm. So there really was no good time. And as a parent, the action should have been to call it off. We had gusts up to 65 miles an hour at my house. Water flooding, even on my way here, roads impassable. Bus drivers have reached out to me with their concerns as well. And there were children, our children, under the age of 18, driving on those roads this morning. That's their mode of transportation. So that definitely needs to be looked at. It was very concerning about the process and the rollout and the communication to parents, and we need to pull it earlier because the high school students leave much earlier. And so that is the concern with having the busing merged the way it is. My next concern, and again, I don't come as often, I try to use this as my time to get everything out there. I will also follow this up with an email. ROTC program was something I was extremely passionate about as a son I have that serves on the USS Virginia, graduated from Fitch 2 years ago, and we needed a form for children who were not college bound, not IB, not AP. We need to be teaching to all kids that want to get into the workforce track. And I had a son and such who wanted that. And Groton did not have the means to support him in this curriculum. As a result, he was interested in the New London program. So we have a starter program for the JROTC program. But if we're going to have something, as was something I had advocated for the last 5 to 6 years, and I thank you for finally implementing it. I stood here several years ago, and certain board members at that time said they didn't want weapons in the school. You can go back and watch the tape, it was stated. Serving our country on the heels, if Groton Submariners, in this town, it is indicative that we have something equivalent that serves the needs of our students. With that, we're not properly funding it. My son helps, with the program. He's an officer in that program. He plans to go into an ROTC program or college readiness program. And the students on Wednesdays wear their uniform proud, but improperly. We do not have proper coats. It's winter. Where are the coats? Where's the funding? When I asked, there is no funding. It's at zero. I did, for full disclosure, reach out to the principal, and I'm very fond of the new principal in place. I know a lot of these actions were done prior to him coming on board. But I am reaching out. We need to properly fund our programs. Students should have the proper gear to do the job. Fencing, another problem. Again, almost just like marching band several years ago, the program almost folded again, and then a teacher in-house decided who knew nothing about fencing took on a program. We compete at a varsity level in fencing. Yesterday, for example, my son was undefeated against 2 schools and several other children as well. Mr. Johnson's son also fenced and had amazing bouts against St. Bernard's and New London, as well as many other seniors and other kids. That program is a robust program which allows every student to get on the strip. No one sits the sideline, and some of the most compatible relationships are formed in that fencing program. Again, not properly funded and not enough coaches to support. When we go to East Lyme and NFA, they show up with 4 and 5 coaches. Without the parent involvement, the program would not exist. We had 3 parents do the background check to be able to support the Armory program. And I'm about to submit my form too to help out because we have no female representation, which we should, to help out the female students. Band. You guys used to pay for the bus or give us a truck to use. That got gutted three years ago. Again, parents are driving a bus every Saturday, a U-Haul bus. There's going to come a time when parents cannot no longer support as we move with the increasing costs and wages. Parents don't have the free time on Saturday to do this. The Board of Ed must act now and find ways to properly support our programs. We were considered an alliance district, and it was for lack of access to music and arts. Well, let's fund it at that then. Let's make sure we have those programs. As it stands, we're using our music teachers to teach task class as well as global citizenship. Task class actually was created by Ian Thomas, who's one of your new board members, and also with the help of me, we found this program in Old Lyme and implemented for the lack of support for 504 students. The program has been wonderful, but the teachers running that class should be in reading, writing, or math curriculum. Use our music teachers to their potential and keep our music enrichment program to be robust. Our music program, we used to have a percussion ensemble, went to the concert, gone. These teachers are now teaching global citizenship and task. They're saying, oh, maybe there wasn't enough programs. There's not enough programs to feed the middle school programs that you're offering at the high school level. Disconnect, curriculum concerns. What are we doing? We got to figure it out. We have programs like marching band and fencing. We don't have feeder programs at the middle school. Wrestling. This is how we have robust competitive programs. We're not paying our coaches enough to get the most competitive coaches in those lower fields, which we need as well. Closing achievement gaps. Very concerned about children with IEPs, 504, college readiness. We have a half-year career counselor. I repeat, she's amazing, but she's only half-year. Why are parents having to pay for a hedge hunter to help them with college readiness when we have a half-year, I repeat, half-year college readiness specialist? She can only do so much. She's not available. We are trying to make sure our kids get into these elite programs. When you want IB and AP, well then show me where we're supporting those students. There's no way a half-time teacher can get to every senior and every parent to make sure that that student is ready. Where's the money? Why aren't we funding it?
Thank you.
AED
You have
machines?
30 seconds, please.
Thank you.
Thank
AED
you.
machines. And my hope with this new board vet, that when I send requests or email that I actually get responses. Unfortunately, in the last term, a lot of things went in echo chambers. Nobody got back to me. I don't want to spend my time coming here to do this like anybody else, but a lot of my concerns are the concerns of my constituents and my friends in the community, and it's my time to speak to you. The AED machines, still as I identified in the new section of the building, there were no mounted accessible AED machines anywhere on the new side of the building. I thank the town manager because I brought this initiative forward after the gentleman had a cardiac arrest from football and realized that we need to make sure we're acting now. When I looked around our buildings, we were not in compliance, in my opinion. We have then since put in almost 15 AED machines in the town of Groton. In the library, there was not one. When I looked at the high school, the nearest one was in the front of the auditorium. That's way too far if you're up on the 3rd floor for a student who has cardiac arrest. I was told that you guys were going to be buying portable, but they need to be accessible because if I was in the building visiting, I am trained. I can grab it. I need to know where they are.
Thank
so
you.
Those are my concerns. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to working with you and hoping that in the new budget year, you're going to be funding closing achievement gaps and making sure that you're supporting everyone who has an IEP, 504, not just IEP and AP. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Is there anyone online? Can we see anyone online? No? Okay. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda would be response to comments from citizens. Does anyone have any responses?
I do.
Yes.
Sorry, first time up here. Is this thing's on?
Yes.
And that's the button that turns it off? All right. I just want to thank, for full disclosure, my wife, Portia Bordelon, for coming up and bringing these concerns forward. I've taken some notes, and I'll be forwarding some referrals to the proper committees on a number of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? The next item is our student representative report.
And I think this is a very busy week. We didn't get, an RSVP that they could make it. So
Okay, all right. So we'll look forward to hearing from them next month. The next item would be superintendent administration reports. So if you'd like
Okay.
to.
I'm going to start with the budget planning for next year. We've actually been monitoring very carefully our budget this year as we've seen increased costs in our schools like we've seen in our homes. So there are several areas that we're watching and monitoring very carefully, and they definitely are still areas that will affect FY25 budget. One of the things you see in the slide that was provided to you, I don't know if they can post that up, the attachment 1. It was in the agenda, and so if there's anyone online who to see it. But if you look at, we have yellow arrows going up, which means that we're seeing increases with wages, transportation, insurance, and utilities. We have one green arrow going down, and I'll explain the legislation that may give us some cost avoidance and cost savings for next year. So we have, of course, existing contractual increases that go up each year that we're responsible for. We have also the Connecticut state minimum wage increase that will be impacting us as of January. And then we also have the transitioning from ARP ESSER funding. And we have been doing work all along in transitioning this, but this will be the end of ARP ESSER. And I got the good word today that our business director, Dave Fleig, has really been able to balance that budget at the end. So we're looking forward to hearing more about that. And I think there'll be some information in finance and facilities and more information coming back with a deeper dive on this in the COW. We do spend much of January, and you will get a packet with some slides for the schools, and you'll be able to look at each of the schools and what the schools cost us, and I'm hoping it's a new way of looking at things. I'm very hopeful that the board and the community will see what the costs are to run each of our buildings. It'll show the number of FTEs, the number of teachers, it'll show the site budgets and what's involved in that, so that you'll have that, and then we'll also show you kind of overarching costs and things that contribute to the budget, like revenue and increases with impact aid revenue that goes right to the town to pay for our budget. So we're going to give you kind of a planning preparation packet before you go home for the holidays. Not that you have to do homework over the holidays, but we're going to get you kind of ready. And then those meetings in January are really setting us up to do the deep dive into the budget. Transportation costs, as you know, we've had an increase with the new contract in the buses. There was a 12.5% for the regular bus rate, 20% midday rate, and then 5% increase for field trips. And I have to shout out for Mark Romano, because he's actually collaborated with the town and been able to use the Thrive 55 bus and the Parks and Rec, so our swim team can go back and forth, and it's at a much better cost to us. So we're really looking at every avenue to help us with this. Insurance with health care trends, and we're going to do a little more deep dive later on tonight about what that's looking like after COVID. We always knew that during COVID a lot of people put things off. And so now we're seeing some of the effects now that, they're able to operationalize. That wasn't a pun. And then property insurance, co-shares increase from the town, so then that comes to us to pay for. Weather pattern changes and just keeping track of utilities. We've talked about how Northeast Academy and CK, we've put in for upgrades on our HVAC systems that haven't really gone through. So we've had a mitigating circumstance where we're running heat and air sometimes simultaneously so that we can prevent anything from showing up that we don't want. So electric rates are also going up, just like at home, and natural gas and oil utilization. So those are all things going up. Now, the Bill 5003 was passed, and what that does is the state will now be providing what the school district used to provide in terms of funding for inter-district magnets for those students going to New London schools, Learn schools, even Ledgered for the VOAG. So that will be a savings in essentially for next year that we won't have to incur that cost. And as it says, it'll eliminate the inter-district magnet tuition cost and also the VOAG. So that's just kind of a glimpse at some of the things that we're dealing with. We've been dealing with it this year a little bit, and we'll be dealing with it next year, but we're monitoring it ever so closely. I don't know if anybody has questions.
Did anyone have any questions on that presentation, or?
I have a question on health insurance. I don't know if this could wait for later, but I'm just wondering if we've looked at the price of opting into the state program for insurance. I know that some districts have done that, and it's been much cheaper rather than
We did a
self-funding.
while ago, but it's something we should probably re-examine.
I think it just happened a couple of years ago, didn't it?
Yeah, but when it first came out, I think that's when we probably did. And it goes through the contracts with the union too. So, but I can also talk to Lori Lapine about that and see if we can get more information about it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see if it could, I know from my own personal thing, my wife has that program, and it was cheaper in her district by a fair amount.
Matthew, and then I believe Ian.
Thank you. First of all, I found the chart very helpful. Whomever on the staff did it, please thank him, her, or them.
Mr. Flagg.
Please thank you. I circled.
Jay, I can't hear anything, Jay.
I'm sorry, is this working now? Bev? Can you hear me now,
Yes, it is,
Bev?
thank you. It's all muffled.
Is
It's
it?
not a good sound when, I don't know how other people listen online, but it's a terrible sound.
Okay, I'll try to talk right
Okay.
into the machine. I looked at the piece that said FTE transition from ARP ESSER funding, and I'm very glad it's there. I have no comment on the transition itself, but there are some data points that I think would be helpful for the board to have when we get to it. Our total employee head count has gone up by 45% since the 16-17 school year, from just shy of 700 to well over 1,000 now. Some of that is organic, some of it is ARP ESSER, some of them, I believe, are paid for by various grants that we've been successful in getting. I think it would be very helpful to know how many we did hire with ARP ESSER funds, how many we'd be able to retain because of some of the grants you've been very successful at getting us, and what number we have left, and how administration sees retention or trimming according to what you think is best for the kids.
Okay.
Ian?
Thank you. So just out of curiosity, the magnet costs going down, you said that the inter-district magnet school tuitions are eliminated. Who's picking those up?
So we always picked up those costs. They're about $8,000 per student. We've also had a decreased number of students going out, I think, with the work that we've done with the Groton 2020 and the intra-district magnets. But I think the cost was over $1 million, so that will be very good timing for this budget, yeah.
And that's the same.
And so the state will take care of that cost, so kids can still, the students still have all that choice, which is really important in the southeastern Connecticut, but the districts won't be having to foot the bill.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that item, or? All right, so if you'd like to move ahead.
All right, well, I'd like
Jay,
Denise.
Jay, I have questions, Jay.
Oh,
You're not
yes.
Sorry,
on
Bev.
the line. I have questions.
Yeah, go ahead, Bev.
I don't know if somebody else asked this question, because I can't really hear that well. How many, with the ARP ESSER, how many positions are you talking about, Susan?
I have to look at the list. There's all kinds of positions. There are extra custodians, extra tutors. We've also had a couple extra teachers in there, social workers. So we have a list that we're looking at, so we'll definitely get that information as
Yeah,
requested
because
by
we're gonna
Matthew.
need that information
Yep.
because those are the fund in our budget. So we're gonna need that information sooner than later.
Will
I
do.
would think.
For instance, is one of the social workers got put into an extra state grant, so we have her for another couple years. So there are some, for instances, where they've just switched over to a different grant, but I'll get that comprehensive list for you. Were you able to hear that,
And,
Beth?
no, it's my fault. I'll ask you tomorrow. But the House Bill 5003.
Right.
Now, if the state's gonna pay for all our students that are going to the magnet schools out of district, is that gonna be a savings for us?
Yes, we will have that as the benefit. We are going to be putting that in the budget as kind of a extra revenue savings that we won't have to pay.
And my last question, it has to do with the school buses. How often do we use school buses outside of the morning run, afternoon runs? Do you know that information? Since the transportation budget is going up, do you know how often we use the buses outside of normal working time?
So the school
Give that
bus.
information to us?
The contract for school buses has gone up, but we've gotten less services. So we used to be provided a 6 to 6 run time, so even field trips were taken care of underneath the old contract. But this year it was so expensive, it would have cost us another $2 million to include the field trips. So they've actually provided some free of charge to each of the schools. We're being very selective. Some of our partners, like Project O, is coming into the schools, and then we go out for a field trip. So we're trying to really make it very effective and efficient, but it is costing us more money. So beyond, the morning run, the midday run, and then the afternoon, and then, of course, after the late buses for, kids and sports and clubs and tutoring. Really, it's the field trips and field experiences that would be extra cost.
Can you get us that information on how often we
Yep,
use those
I
buses?
certainly can do that.
We're paying extra for?
Yep,
Okay, thank you, Susan.
will do.
Sure.
With the anticipated savings in that line item, where do you anticipate those monies being redirected or reallocated?
Probably to pay for all these other yellow arrows that are going up. We're going to have to, we've got a lot of things that are increased. And so it's going, it's quite, an undertaking. So we're really monitoring it carefully this year and seeing what we can do. And then we'll be, sharing with you all where we think it's going to land. We still have a few more things we want to shave off before sharing with you the final number. But we're working on it.
And then the board will be holding budget work sessions through most of January to determine where our priorities are.
Appreciate it. And the Finance Committee is meeting tomorrow. Is there
Right.
going to be initial discussions on that?
I know there was an agenda that was passed out, so whatever's on our agenda. So there are some of the, more in-depth information on the financial challenges, and there were some attachments there too. So all board members are certainly welcome to, zoom in or come in. And then budget, the budget process had an attachment, and then any cost updates that we've had, and the Director of Finance will report, and Director of Building and Grounds, which is Sam. So,
And is there a sense that, as far as like the arts and music programs, as far as like trying to?
I'm trying to roll out a budget that keeps everything whole for our kids. That's my goal.
Thank you.
And maybe a few other things that we might need, that have been even brought up tonight.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then we'll move to the special education. This is one of those items that is on our so-called
Monthly.
board template,
Yeah.
and so it's something that comes up. It's a report that's basically due each December to discuss this topic.
And I have Denise Doolittle here, who's our Pupil Personnel Director, with our Board Certified Behavior Analysts, BCBAs they're called. And they've done some awesome work. They've actually been the reason why we can bring kids back from out-of-district placement, and we can take care of so many of our students right here in Groton. And it's their work in collaboration under your direction, Denise. So I'll let you go from there.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Denise Doolittle. I'm the Director of Pupil Personnel Services. And I'd like to welcome our new board members as well as our returning board members. So as Jay said, December is generally a special ed presentation. And I'm pleased to introduce two wonderful, yeah, thank you, Clint. Two wonderful additions to our team. We have Mr. Ian Williamson and Ms. Samantha King. And they are board certified behavior analysts, and they do very important work in our district, but sometimes their work is not as well understood as it should be. So our goal tonight is to help you understand their role and to explain to you that we have two full-time board certified behavior analysts. The acronym is BCBA, and we have one part-time. So Ian is employed directly by the board, and Sam and her partner, Ms. Iram Peters, who was unable to be here tonight, are contracted through Learn, our regional partner. So they're going to present to you an overview of their duties and their role and how they support our students and our staff. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, board members, Groton colleagues, and Groton community. Thank you for giving us this time to talk about ourselves and a little bit more depth. We don't really get this opportunity that often, so we really appreciate it. First thing we'd like to go over is what is a BCBA? So, as mentioned before, BCBA is a board certified behavior analyst. In order to get this certification, what you initially need to do is go through an applied behavior. Is this better? Yeah. Okay. You need to go through an applied behavior analysis international certified master's level degree. You need to go through an extensive practicum, which is compiled of about 2,000 hours of supervised field work. You need to sit and pass the board certified behavior analyst exam, and then you need to continue to maintain your accreditation. Every single 2 years, you need 32 continuing education credits in order to maintain your certification. And you also need to continue to comply with the board's code of ethics continuously. So what a BCBA does, honestly, it comes down.
Sorry, you're trying to get your mic so that everyone online can hear.
Okay. So what it comes down to is just what's in the title. We analyze behavior. You know, when we think of behavior in education, generally we think of maladaptive behaviors, but honestly, behavior can be anything that someone does. So we look at a student or schools or classrooms very holistically in that way. In our science, any sort of behavior is a form of communication. And so what our job is to figure out what that student or what that environment is communicating to us, figure out the supports that we can provide to help them achieve whatever their goal is, and then move forward from there.
Just one moment, if you would. Beverly, is the sound any better?
No, the sound is absolutely terrible. If it continues, I'm just gonna leave the meeting.
Can we get a different?
In and out. It's terrible.
She needs to turn it up on her side, because I just like, if I turn it up any louder, it's gonna feed back.
Do you have any ability, can you hear me, Beverly? Do you have any ability to raise it up a little bit on your end, or?
Can she call you?
Yeah, it's already up on my end.
Okay.
The sound goes in and out, it's muffled.
Do we have another mic?
Would it help if I was closer? Is this better?
Yeah.
Perfect. Is this better for everybody joining in online?
I'm getting a note from one person that they're hearing, as long as the speaker faces the mic.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
All right, so to go a little bit more in depth about our responsibilities in district, generally when people hear BCBA, they're talking about students in our tier 3, so severely impacted students. But our responsibilities in district actually go above and beyond that. We work with a lot of tier 1 students, or excuse me, students in tier 1, specifically with Dr. Murray. We've consulted with a lot of school teams to provide supports, specifically staff training, to help out with those students in that tier. We also work closely with a lot of other related service providers to generate groups for students who also need tier 2 supports. Other responsibilities that we have are supervision and training of staff, like I said before. I know that the district is considering employing registered behavior technicians, and part of their qualification continuing to be certified by the board is a certain number of their hours being supervised by a behavior analyst. We also complete evaluations. We consult with a variety of different multidisciplinary teams within the school setting. We work to improve social emotional learning interventions. We work on academic programming. Honestly, the bulk of the assessments that we complete in district are functional behavioral assessments, which we'll get into a little bit later. And then from those, we compile behavior intervention plans, which outline all the supports that we offer to the students, specifically in the tier 3 and tier 2 supports. So to get more into the bulk of the assessments that we complete in district, the main one that we complete is a functional behavioral assessment. And really what that does is that delves into the functions of the behavior that a student is engaging in. This is typically for students who are engaging in maladaptive behaviors. So like I said before, all behavior is a form of communication. This functional behavioral assessment is just a compilation of smaller assessments that allows us to figure out what that behavior is communicating. Once we figure out what that behavior is communicating, we can apply different interventions and different supports to help either alleviate that problem behavior or increase any sort of socially appropriate behavior that we want to see in the school setting.
May I ask if what type of percentage of the students are already special education kids and how many are general population? I don't know what word to use. Are non-special education kids? In reading this, it was not clear to me who you were serving, and I presumed, probably incorrectly, that we were looking at what you call maladaptive behavior as a result of COVID and the stresses that were going with that. I had no idea that you were doing the other things.
So what I was saying before is that we serve, honestly, all students in Groton Public School System. So tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. When you hear about a behavior analyst, normally you would think about the tier 3, which is in self-contained, very heavily impacted classrooms. But we actually do work with a lot of staff across all of district. Me and Ms. King have offered trainings to a lot of paraprofessionals in all of our schools for work on just basic like crisis management and student management, specifically increasing those social and emotional learning opportunities throughout the district, which I think we placed a pretty heavy emphasis on last year.
Thank you.
Not a problem. So to go more in depth on the functional behavioral assessment, or the FBA that we generally complete, it is required by IDA for students whose behavior impacts the learning of themselves or others. So that would be almost every single student in all of our self-contained classrooms. And once again, this assessment helps us figure out the function of the behavior so that we can apply supports to help that student access their education. Any other? No. Okay, so to delve deeper into the FBA and how we gather information, it's compiled of a bunch of different smaller assessments. We complete direct observations, record reviews of all the past assessments that a student has had. We interview different members of that student's school team, their family members, and then we really, the biggest meat of this whole assessment is data collection. We do a lot of very intensive data collection that delves into the settings in which behavior happens, the activities that the student is engaged in when the behavior happens, what triggers the behavior, and then what the consequences are. And from that, we compile a bunch of different reports to figure out where that behavior is happening and what is triggering it so that we can apply appropriate interventions. Once we have all the necessary information from that assessment, we compile what's called a functional hypothesis, or the reason why that student is engaging in that behavior. And from that, we develop a behavior intervention plan which outlines all of the supports that we think are appropriate.
Okay. I'll try to be a little bit louder so it's a little clearer too. So as Ian was saying, once we've done the full-blown assessment, our next step is going into that behavior intervention plan, which really dives into those direct supports that we're going to be providing the staff working with the students to make the environment more successful for them. So a lot of that will be environmental modifications that the student needs just to complete their work, any academic modifications that need to be made, which looks into how the work is presented, if they need additional time, a quiet space, just a few examples. The adaptation of the curriculum, so especially looking into some of the different programs that the district uses, really individualizing what each student needs. And then social skills instruction, so teaching and increasing those appropriate behaviors. Because as we were saying, the engagement in behaviors is communication. The student is engaging in those to communicate something to them. So also focusing on teaching those appropriate behaviors to replace those. The components of the behavior intervention plan, we start out with the description of the behavior. So really making sure that we are defining it so each staff that might come in contact with the student or work with them knows exactly what they're looking for and what to expect. Also explaining that function for each of the behaviors that was completed in the FBA, because each behavior could have their own individual function. So making sure that we're going through each one and explaining that out. The antecedent strategies, so those are the proactive measures that we make to prevent the behavior. So a lot of those focus on those environmental modifications that need to be made. And then the consequence strategies, so how to respond to those behaviors. And that's a big one that in our behavior intervention plan, we typically do a grid at the bottom. So it's when the student engages the behavior, how the staff should immediately respond to those to make sure we're not further maintaining them or reinforcing, making the student engage in it more frequently. And then continuing with that data collection method, because all of our decisions and interventions are based around that data. So we're continuously taking data, we're training the staff on how to collect the data, so that way we can make any changes as needed. And then also a crisis intervention plan, if it's needed for the individual student. Now, kind of just diving in more specifically of what that BCBA support looks like in the district. So outside of just assessments, we wear a lot of hats when we're out in the schools supporting them. Obviously that behavior observation and data collection, the direct observation, but also developing and implementing those interventions. We do the full-blown functional behavior assessments and behavior plans for students, but also for some of our students, we might not need the full assessment done. We will develop behavior management guidelines, so that way we can give it to the staff working with the students to continuously train them and have specific guidelines. These are very helpful because they follow the student. Every single year you might come in contact with different staff, have a different teacher moving between even schools within the district that jump from elementary to middle school to high school, and it follows them and has those interventions right now. Reinforcement strategies, so not just specifically to the student, but working with the teachers in the district to work on classroom reinforcement strategies, how to, continue to build that engagement and really support all of the students in the district. And that direct staff training, so this is really a big one that we work with the staff, is that crisis management, student specific, so training our paraprofessionals that are working directly with our students on how to manage all of the different behaviors, so that way we're keeping the students safe and also the staff that are working directly with them. And the way that we do that is through behavior skills training, which is an acronym for instructions, modeling, role play, and then feedback. So continuously doing that throughout the week to make sure that the staff getting the training are very engaged. We can provide feedback on site with them and really get them engaged in the training and make sure that they have that deep understanding. Make sure I have a question.
Before we go any further, is there anyone at this point that would like to jump in with anything that we've covered so far? Would like any clarification?
I have a question specifically about data collection that you guys mentioned a bunch. What specific data are you guys looking at, and how do you utilize that for each individual?
Yeah, so that varies from student to classroom. Generally, we are tracking any of the behaviors that we've identified. So if it's a behavior that we want to see more of, we're going to take data on that. If it's a behavior that we want to see less of, we'll take data on that. We'll compile it and then graph the results and analyze those results, and then make any sort of decisions based off of those results on whether we need to change programming or if the current programming is working for that behavior.
Thank you.
Yes, Ian.
And just to be clear, in the beginning, you talked about how you determined who to create a FBA about, which students to look at. And I wasn't quite clear on that. Is it you wait for a maladaptive behavior to arise and then be reported, and that begins the process of the FBA?
Yeah, that's generally how it works. A student will engage in a maladaptive behavior. If that behavior continues and becomes very prevalent in the academic environment, then we would conduct that targeted assessment. Generally, school teams will try to implement some other supports in the Tier 1 and Tier 2 strategies before that student goes down into the Tier 3 strategies. But that's generally how it works, yeah.
I'm sorry. Jen?
I know at the beginning you had mentioned that you basically support the entire student population, but specifically, how many cases are you tracking?
Good question.
So that varies from BCBA to BCBA. We do have a caseload of students because we are in student IEPs now. Yeah, it varies because certain students will have more hours than other students. So it kind of shifts. I think right now in district we have about 56.5 total BCBA hours. But then there's also consultation to our other self-contained programs like the academy programs, schools out in integrated classrooms, and then also in the general education setting.
Great, thank you.
Matthew had a question?
Two questions. Could you give us an idea of roughly how many students are benefiting from the FBA and the intervention plan?
Yeah.
I would say it's probably the direct BCBA hours that Ian was talking about, so that.
But you don't, what about numbers of children?
Yeah.
I don't have the exact number of students who have FBAs in district just because they can also be completed by social workers. So I don't know the exact number of students with FBAs in district.
What about the intervention plans?
So as soon as a student has an FBA, they should have a behavior intervention plan. Those things go hand in hand. The FBA informs the behavior intervention plan.
Is this considered a HIPAA-covered intervention with requirements for securing data, et cetera?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ian?
And, you mentioned earlier too that, behavior analysis doesn't just restrict itself to maladaptive behaviors, but also to positive behaviors. I'm just wondering, is there any sort of data on that, or how is that assessed within our district as far as things on the positive side?
So once again, it kind of varies from student to student, case by case. You'll see a lot of that with like the positive behavior supports. I know that's been a huge focus in education recently. For students specifically in our self-contained classrooms, because those are the students that we work with most often, it just comes down to data tracking of the behaviors that we want to see more. So maybe it's appropriate transitions throughout the school environment. Sometimes transitioning from location to location can be really difficult for a student. And so if they're doing that appropriately, we want to see more of that, so we figure out interventions on how we can increase those behaviors in the school setting. Just for an example.
A positive reinforcement model?
Exactly. Yeah.
And one of the things that is really the purpose and the goal is to see those kids graduate from the programs, and that happens often. We have 3 8th graders that are graduating, and so that's
I don't
putting.
understand how the town council can be heard so clearly. And whenever they're subordinating in the annex, you can't hear. I don't understand that.
Oh.
Deb's
She
irritated
has
too,
her
apparently,
mic
it looks like.
on.
She can't hear anybody.
Yeah, I can't hear anything. I just gave up.
Okay, well, it seems like we're getting conflicting information on whether people can hear or not. So were you able to hear the board members speaking? Beverly?
Now, like I said before, Jay, the sound is very muffled, it's gurgly, it goes in and out. I don't know what, I don't understand. The town council, you can hear perfectly, but you guys, it's always a problem with you guys. you know, with the Board of Ed, not you guys, excuse me, when we have a meeting there, you can't hear. So I
Okay.
don't know. I
So
don't
we'll
know
have
what
to
the
look-
problem is, but, and I don't know if other people listening online are having the same problem, but I have my sound turned all the way up. And, then when you can hear, then it's blasting in your ear.
Blasting.
Yeah, so what we'll have to do is consult with Sean Greeley. My understanding was we're using the equipment that's in place, or have we brought our own equipment here today? All right, so maybe we can consult with Sean about settings, optimal settings, and I apologize for that.
That's because our nameplates are not nailed down.
I am trying.
Yep.
I don't want any feedback in here either, so I'm like super limited is the. Sorry, I watched
Yeah.
on TV.
It's a link.
All right.
You can't watch it on TV. They don't post it
so-
live on you,
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
which is another thing.
But we want to take a recess to see if we get that
Yeah,
figured out?
I know.
Like maybe a 5-minute quick tune-up?
I mean, sure, yeah.
Dave, you heard it?
So we'll stand in recess for 5 minutes.
We'll try to figure this out. So after that 5 minutes, I think everybody needs to speak right into the mic so that they can hear as best we can, right? I have to use my teacher voice,
Okay.
my principal voice.
All right, so we are back from recess, and we will continue our meeting. Were there any other board members that had points of clarification at this point, or shall we return to the presenters? Okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry, we're back in the meeting now?
We're back. Mhm.
Okay. I guess, well, this may come up later in the presentation, I'm not sure, but I was just curious to say, like, what does it look like as far as like addressing a behavior intervention plan? How does it carried out? How is it actually executed on the ground with the students that are in a way that are disruptive to others in a classroom? What are the next steps and how are they managed?
So once we develop the FBA and the behavior intervention plan, what we would do is we would propose it to the team members, and as long as everybody is on board with those interventions, then we would go ahead and start training everybody who contacts that student or would contact those behaviors to make sure that everybody is on the same page and is responding to the behavior in the same way and also has the same antecedent interventions to prevent that behavior from happening. We would continue data tracking of that behavior to measure how well the behavior intervention plan is working. If the behavior increases or stays at baseline, we would switch around interventions and hold a team meeting or a PBT in order to switch those interventions and then continue monitoring until that behavior is tracking in the right way. So decreasing for maladaptive behaviors and increasing for the appropriate behaviors that we want to see.
So would there be a situation where you might find students in a separate room at times, or?
We have proposed alternative workspaces before, but we don't like to isolate students. There's definitely been times where safety has been a concern with certain behaviors. And I believe in district there are some like quiet rooms and quiet spaces that have been utilized before for very intense, dangerous, unsafe behaviors that students have engaged in. But in general, we like to utilize the least restrictive environment. And so whenever a student is able to be in some sort of environment, we'd like them to be around gen ed peers or around other peers whenever possible. We don't like to isolate students.
Understood. Well, the quiet rooms, what are those like? If, say, something has to go that far?
They're just small rooms where a student can go to regulate themselves.
And there's a social worker or somebody, some sort of therapist there to help them regulate themselves? Or coach them through the moment?
Staff in the room, generally a special education teacher, one of us, or another certified staff member, whoever's available. Generally, we like to have the most certified and experienced staff in those moments that we can.
Okay, thank you.
Dean?
I can appreciate all the precise and technical language, but I have a simple question. Does this work, and how do you know? And I understand it's a matter of degree. You can't reach everybody to the same extent, but how would you know that that your approach is effective?
We look at the data that we take. So, you know, we take data on all of the behaviors that we're measuring, and say a student is not following directions or not completing work in a classroom. When we see that behavior start to decrease with our data, so say they, you know, are refusing 2 assignments per day, and then a week later they're only refusing 1 assignment per day, that would generally be a key that our interventions are working.
Because I know there's nothing more frustrating. Your teachers already have the transition time when the bell rings, and the bell rings again, and there's X amount of time where the kids settle down and a lesson can begin. And if there's a disruptive child, that just starts the clock all over again. So it can be very frustrating for teachers, and at some point, some teachers say, I've had it, and this is why you see sometimes early retirements. This is a very, very important issue. And I want to make sure that for what we're spending, we're actually getting corrective behavior. Looks good on paper. Is it happening? Are we actually steering enough kids away to make a difference and allow the other kids, and those kids as well, to learn? That's all I want to know, is what the metric is. Do you see the results? How long have you been at this?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a variety of different graphical representations of all of the behaviors and all of the students in our caseload that we could show. But through our science, we use only evidence-based practices. So from, the research in our science, they show that interventions are successful for certain populations of students, and then it's our job to apply things that have been shown to work in more restrictive or isolated environments to students in a school population. And with the data tracking, we can show reliably whether an intervention is working or not. So we can track when we initiate something, whether a behavior increases or decreases, and then track each sequential change following that. So we can monitor that. I mean, that's one of our jobs, is just continuously monitoring progress and setting up progress monitoring for not only just ourselves, but also assisting, related service providers and also teachers to monitor progress for academics as well.
Is there a year-end review or a quarterly, or maybe by semester? Do you report to the building principal, the superintendent, or to whom do you relay this information, and how often do you do that?
So all of that stuff is recorded in a student's IEP, but we also report directly to Ms. Doolittle, who facilitates a lot of that, professional monitoring and things like that for ourselves. But we also meet for a lot of our students annually for their annuals and any other time that is necessary.
Yeah, because what I'd be curious about is, are we decreasing the levels? We have X level of disruption. It's affecting the disruptors and those who are being disrupted, but we have decreased that level. Again, not to change the focus away from the individuals, that's what we're about, but is the school environment, is the classroom environment improved? Can you say that at the end of a year or at the end of a quarter? You have those metrics, you can report that to the building principal, for example.
Yeah, we can show that graphically and through our data. I think the academic environment is constantly changing, right. So I can't, speak to the total level of the district. There's a lot of things outside of our control. But for the students on our caseload, I would say, a significant portion of them are making significant progress on all of their behavior objectives in their IEP and just general level of behavior.
So at the end of the period, I could ask a teacher and say, any teacher, and say, was your year easier? Did your year get easier? Was your semester easier? Was your quarter easier? They should be able to say, yes, we had a rough start. Certain wrinkles had to be ironed out, but it got better. It got smoother with the intervention. That's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you can speak to the teachers that we work with.
All right, thank you.
I also say that there's this embedded coaching piece that is happening across the district. So with the classroom teachers, with the paraprofessionals, the ability to now have an RBT, which was taking our paraprofessionals and giving them specialized training to do this kind of work too. So it's ongoing, and I think that's the secret to this, that's really what improves the entire school environment, is the more educated we all are, principals included, all of us, the better we're going to be able to meet the needs of the students. And so that's part of your work too, is coach to the rest of us too.
Jen?
Going back to the metrics, do you track how many students come in and then how many students graduate so that we can actually see if we are making progress?
As far as like district-wide or the students?
District-wide?
We don't keep those numbers, but I'm sure that we can get those too.
So I'm trying to understand, I sit here and I'm trying to understand what are you tracking and what metrics are being provided so that we can understand that we are being successful in our endeavors and ensuring that students are receiving like the appropriate support.
Yeah, so once again, it kind of varies case by case. I would say probably the bulk of our job is focused on the maladaptive behaviors in the school environment because those are the ones that really impact, that specific student's learning and also the students around them. So we track the number of times or the percentage of the day that the student engages in maladaptive behaviors continuously. So every single day, a student will have a sheet that whoever's working with them, or say the teacher in the classroom, will record behavioral data. So we get an idea of every single day what percentage or how many times that student engages in one of those maladaptive behaviors, and then we track that. And so we can see like a graphical representation. Obviously, if things are trending downwards, that's a really good sign, and so that's how we know.
Okay.
One more quick question about the paraprofessionals that you work with. You say there's training going on. How's that training administered? And is it like a certified training course, or is it more informal?
Yeah, so that actually kind of relays into these next couple of bullet points, actually. So we do a variety of them, whether it's individual based on the behavior intervention plan, and typically that will be done meeting one-on-one with the paraprofessional and also doing that behavior skills training, just making sure that they know exactly how they should respond to those behaviors. But also in the district, we have provided district-wide trainings on professional development days, so including the discrete trial training, which is an adaptation of kind of the teaching method that we use with the majority of our students. It really simplifies a learning opportunity for them. It breaks it down into smaller achievable skills. So we provide the direct training to the paraprofessionals and even some of the tutors in the school district that work one-on-one with the students. Also on the data collection methods, because we do use a variety of different ones from student to student, whether it's a frequency data count or when we do like a partial interval, which kind of focuses on that percentage of the day, duration, if we want to focus on how long a student is able to stay on task or stay in the general education setting, and just making sure that we're providing that direct training with them. So outside, whether it's in the moment in the classroom, providing that training, or outside of it through the district-wide trainings as well.
So they do acquire some certification in the professional development, like the ones that are formalized training, that does like add to their dossier of certifications? Is there a certification for a paraprofessional to work?
No, it's a little bit
programs?
more informal than that, but the district-wide trainings bring up a lot of the paraprofessionals in the self-contained classrooms or who are working with students who need paraprofessional support in the general education environment. So we get them up to speed on a lot of different interventions and antecedent interventions that will be helpful for them to help manage that student's behavior.
We are trying to formalize that with an RBT in some of our specialized classrooms where there is specialized training, and work towards that certification, and then they would be reporting to the BCBA. So that really is a way to grow our paras with some super training and formalize that process. But for the paras who are working in these programs each and every day, the work that they are doing, the BCBAs with them, is really helping to take care of the kids' needs day to day.
Right. And one more question about the specialized classrooms. When you're organizing those and figuring out how to populate them with the students that you have under your purview, do you take a more of a homogeneous approach or a heterogeneous approach when it comes to, say, like the range of behaviors or range of differentiated needs of the student? Like, is it likely that you might have in the same classroom a student maybe that's just got some ADD or ADHD issues in the same classroom as someone who maybe has like more pronounced autism?
So all of these classrooms are already populated. I would say they're organized based off of what the team recommends, so it's not just our input that goes into it. You know, there's also a special education teacher. We talk to the principals. It's a really holistic approach to who's going in what classroom. Generally, in my experience and the way that I like to provide input into who's going into those classrooms is based off of academic level. You know, age goes into that as well. So generally age and academic level, and then also the type of disability that that student has. Those are generally the three factors that we consider.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you'd like to continue.
So some of the other supports that we provide in the district, a big one is parent training. So we're just making it a whole team support, so making sure we're reaching out to the parents. We've met with students' parents through Zoom or in person to provide any direct training they might need at home specific to the behaviors that they see, or any struggle areas that they just bring up to us, and really just making them also feel a part of that team and that support. So it's not just while they're in school, but also providing that additional support to them as well when the kids are at home. And also continuing with those staff and team meetings. A lot of us will meet with, we have our specialized programs, meeting with them weekly with the direct staff in the classroom, whether it's paraprofessionals or the direct teachers, meeting with them weekly, really just to make sure if any of the individual staff we work on have any concerns, feel that they might need any additional training on anything or additional supports. Those really are our important direct staff. They're our eyes and ears when we're not there, and just really making those meetings the most important to make sure their input is heard and support them as best as we can. Another big one is on IEP goals. So not only just the behavior-specific goals that we might implement and monitor for the individualized student, but also supporting the teachers on developing academic goals, really looking at the year as a whole and how we can best support them in reaching those students' goals. We focus on some vocational and even life skills goals as well. So stepping outside of just the academics, how we can also support some of those different goals for the students. And then also training on protective holds. I know Ian is actually one of the trainers for the district, so he's providing that certification to staff when needed.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any additional questions?
Yeah.
Ian?
Oh, just a quick follow-up on the protective holds and the extreme cases. Are there paraprofessionals involved in those cases as well, or is it all just BCBA specific personnel or in special ed specific personnel?
Yeah, so I do provide PMT training to paraprofessionals, so they can have that certification.
And that is a formalized training?
Yes, that is.
And is there an incentive for them to take that training, or some sort of quote-unquote hazard pay?
No, I don't believe so.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And coming up to the podium is Nadine Macklin, who really oversees our early childhood and elementary programming. And she's bringing to us a proposal that we've discussed regarding next year's new legislation, where a student needs to be 5 years old to enter kindergarten by September 1st. And this is new legislation in Connecticut, but this is what typically happens in every other state in the union. We're really one of the only states that has allowed 4-year-olds to come to kindergarten all the way through, not turning 5 until the next year, January 1. So, but we've got some good ideas around this, so.
So good evening, board members, and welcome to our new board members. Very nice to see you all tonight. So Denise is sitting with me as my emotional support. So I just we're going to be talking about a lot of dates. So if at any point in time, if you just need anything clarified, please feel free to just have me pause, okay? So I want you just to picture this. It's December 18th, 2019, and your child is just born. So 2020 comes around, your child turns 1. 2021 comes around, your child turns 2. 2022 comes around, your child turns 3. And then 2023 comes around and your child turns 4. And you are preparing for your child to enter kindergarten the following year. Okay? So a lot of our parents, they do have their children in childcare. They have their children in different programs that they're paying for. And because we're in the state of Connecticut, they're banking on their child entering kindergarten the following year. But we were informed over the summer that the legislation was passed, which is actually a huge win for education because it's something that a lot of educators have been fighting for in terms of this legislative change of having 4-year-olds, just giving them some more time. Many of us know that the standards in kindergarten have risen over the years, and so having 4-year-olds come into kindergarten, it wasn't really appropriate, and many of our kindergarten teachers can speak to that very profoundly. So I just wanted to give everyone just an update in terms of how Groton is going to be addressing this legislative change. So as Susan said, starting next year, in the 2024-25 school year, a child will need to be 5 years old, either on or before September 1st, in order to automatically be eligible for kindergarten. So this is a change from the old cutoff date of January 1st. Because this legislation was shared with the state of Connecticut over the summer of 2023, they wanted to soften the blow, for lack of a better word, to families and to school communities by creating this caveat, which lets us pretty much consider students who are not age eligible for kindergarten by giving them the possibility of early entrance into kindergarten. And the way in which the state has given us guidance to do that is by informing us that parents can actually provide a written request. So a parent can write to our district, and we're actually going through just finalizing how parents can notify us. So they can provide us with a written request saying that they'd like their child to start kindergarten early because they're not going to be 5 on or before September 1st. And as a school district, we're responsible for assessing the child to see if they're developmentally appropriate and ready for kindergarten. So that is our responsibility. So the Connecticut State Department of Education, they provided us with an update in October, just acknowledging the fact that this is a huge lift for districts and the fact that kindergarten enrollment numbers will be impacted as a result of this new legislation. So consider the fact that essentially any students born between September 2nd and December 31st will not automatically be considered for kindergarten unless their parent will, submit the written request, and, after assessed, they're determined eligible as a developmentally appropriate student and ready for kindergarten. So they just wanted to acknowledge the fact that this is a huge lift. One of the things that they have done is they've actually let us, given us the liberty in terms of certification to reassign teachers. So, for example, if there's a kindergarten certified teacher, they can now teach pre-kindergarten. We've been given allowances as it relates to certification for next year to pretty much assist us with the implementation of this legislation. So, yes.
Is this a one-year option, or was this planned that will continue beyond the next 1 year?
So this is now the law. This is permanent in terms of students needing to be 5 years old on or before September 1st.
But does the waiver upon parental request plus assessment, is that a one-year thing that goes away after this transition year?
No, that
We
goes
have
with
not
the
been
legislation.
informed. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great, thank
Yep.
you.
So in terms of any extra guidance from the state, our leadership team, we've, any regional meetings that have taken place since the rollout of this legislation to just assist us with our implementation, we've, made ourselves available to. So I can speak for myself. I've been to, CREC meetings, I've been to EastCon meetings, I've been to OEC, or the Office of Early Childhood meetings about this legislation, and I will say that there is no firm guidance from the state. Pretty much districts are left to themselves to create the system in which they have elected to roll this legislation out.
I have to say, though, that in Groton, we saw this problem a while ago, and we really were first out of the gate to create something called a transitional K program, which Nadine's going to tell you more about, really looking at that population of children that were still 4 between September 1 and January 1. It's been a highly successful program. We've actually created curriculum that was really in line with early childhood standards and some of the Common Core standards for kindergarten. And while students will mostly be ready for kindergarten, there are a handful that do go to first grade after Transition K. So we do have that. We've had that in place. We've only had one program. So we feel like we're a step ahead. We've used the Brigance, which is really a developmental assessment tool that is scientifically research-based. So in our kindergarten screenings, we've already done this kind of a process to see what kids are ready for. So I feel like Groton is a step ahead in this, that we really have a game plan. So
Yes.
I'm going to let you go with your proposal.
That's the perfect introduction. So our proposal, I just wanted to paint the picture in terms of the opportunities that we will afford our community for next year for our youngest learners. So we will continue to have our pre-kindergarten program, and next year the students that will be in our half-day pre-kindergarten program will be students who are turning 4 years old between January 1st and September 1st of 2024. So that will be our pre-kindergarten population. Our transitional kindergarten classroom, which will be full day, will be afforded to our students who are between 5 years old, so they'll be turning 5 between September 2nd and December 31st of 2024. So those are the students that have not made that cutoff date of being eligible for kindergarten. And again, that would be a full day program, mirroring what we currently do at Thames. And then for kindergarten, again, full day program, and eligible students are 5 years old on or before September 1st of 2024.
Unless they've written the waiver and they've been assessed that they can join us. And it won't be age dependent, it's based on development.
So I just wanted to share with the board the differences between our pre-kindergarten program and our transitional kindergarten program. So again, just reiterating, pre-kindergarten is half day for our younger 4-year-old students. And in terms of the flow of pre-kindergarten, they're going to be afforded the learning opportunities that are age appropriate for students who are on the younger side of 4. And students will continue to have access to transportation, which is what we currently have in place in our pre-kindergarten class. In terms of transitional kindergarten, that will be a full day program, and that will again be for students who have not turned 5 on that September 1st cutoff. And the curriculum and just the scope of their day will be a play-based learning experience that's developmentally appropriate for our students who are on the older side of 4 years old through 5 years old in 2024. And those students will have access to specials, lunch, and recess similar to our current TK class at Thames River. So I just wanted to reiterate the fact that this is something that we are rolling out very intentionally, and we want to make sure that the early learning opportunities for our students, both in any of our early childhood programs, are high quality, which they are, and they are readying them for kindergarten, the rigor of kindergarten. So just some of the highlights that will continue is the Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum, really setting the foundation for students' readiness skills when it comes to reading, the implementation of the Second Step Social and Emotional Learning Curriculum, and really highlighting those play-based learning opportunities for students that are geared towards their interests, but also are in alignment with the early learning and development standards for math, science, social studies, and cognition. So next, we just want to talk about the fact that for that student who is not yet age eligible for kindergarten, the answer to this legislation that Susan was speaking to in terms of offering and expanding our transitional K program in the district is really solving that equity piece. There are families that will not have access to continue providing, their child with a daycare or a preschool program in the community because it's another year of expense. So there are some families that will be able to do it. There are some families that will not be able to do it. And this is a real opportunity for Groton Public Schools to get our students really ready for the rigor of kindergarten. And so lastly, being in all of these meetings, I will say that Groton is a lighthouse in the state. There are a lot of districts that actually are very interested in mirroring what we're doing as it relates to transitional K to answer the need and just the response to this legislation. Our neighboring partner in Stonington, one administrator actually asked if she can come and just observe TK because she's really interested in actually doing this also in Stonington.
Ledyard also wants to come. Yep.
So we are game changers. So in terms of the proposal, I just wanted to paint the picture in terms of what we are mapping out to answer the response of our new legislation, and that is turning at least one kindergarten classroom in each building, with the exception of Charles Barnum, to a transitional kindergarten class. And that transitional kindergarten class will be taught by a kindergarten teacher. Again, the State Department of Education has given us allowances as it relates to certification, and so our kindergarten teachers will be allowed to teach TK. Yeah, so Charles Barnum, if you look at Charles Barnum is staying at 3 right now.
We have to see what the needs are. Yeah. That's our highest mobile military school, so we're going to see what the needs are, but we still would take care of their students who needed a TK program.
Yes. Yeah. Any questions about this proposal before I go on?
Yeah, just real quick, I mean, you already kind of touched on it there. I was just concerned to hear what plans there would be to accommodate for military children, late transfers and that sort of thing. You may cover that later on in the presentation.
Yes.
But I just kind of wanted to put that thought out there.
Yes, yep, and that's definitely something that we've thought about as well.
And one more thing too, when it comes to the assessments, I'm curious to know like how they're being developed and how they're going to be implemented, and if there's some intentionality being attached to considering different socioeconomic backgrounds to make sure that we're not creating a filter inadvertently.
Sure, yes. I think whenever we do our screenings, we look at the whole child. So definitely, filtering out, for example, our multilingual learners. That's something that I touch on in the slides, to come, as well as students with IEPs, which is our next slide. Looking to see if accommodations need to be put in place while screening, but really and truly looking at the whole child and considering all aspects as we're, assessing them.
Thank you.
So in terms of early entrance, which Mr. Thomas just touched on, so early entrance for into kindergarten for students with an IEP, again, it's the exact same process. So parents, of students with IEPs whose child does not meet the September 1st cutoff date, they would follow the exact same process of just making their request in writing, to have us assess them, to consider them for early entrance into kindergarten, and we would, do the assessment and get back to the parents as it relates to, what's most developmentally appropriate for their child. And so I just wanted to list the options just so that parents don't think that there are no options. So of course the Transition kindergarten is definitely an option, and again, that's a full-day program. And if the child is, deemed as developmentally appropriate for kindergarten, they would receive early entrance. And then there is a third option, which is our integrated preschool program. So students, more than likely with an IEP, if they're not moving in from another district, they would have already been in our integrated preschool program, and they can actually stay another year in the preschool program. And that's something that the legislation notes, that students are allowed to remain in their preschool program to continue receiving their special education services. There are some students that are just not ready for a full day, and so that's why I think it's a beautiful thing that our integrated preschool program option is still available for them. And again, any of these decisions are based on the PPT process with the parent. So in terms of the assessment process, we're going to have our kindergarten teachers and speech and language pathologists rotating as we, pretty much develop and map out our assessment calendar starting in February of 2024. We really want to get a head start on the assessments because we really want to see the numbers as it relates to how many students will be in TK versus how many students will be, granted early entrance into kindergarten. And so essentially we'd like to assess students 2 days per month. And we have an actual screening room at Mary Morrison. That's where we do our preschool and pre-K community-wide screenings. It's a room that is play-based. It has everything that's set up, so we can actually just schedule sessions just to have parents have their child come to Mary Morrison on the date selected. We also want to reach out to the community because we know a lot of parents have students or children in childcare in the community. So instead of having them bring their child to Mary Morrison, we want to see how we can partner with our community preschool programs to actually do off-site assessments as well. So I just listed some of the programs that we would like to pretty much pilot this with. So ECDC, which stands for the Early Childhood and Development Center, Riverfront, TVCCA, and the Sub-Base Youth Center.
I have to also say Nadine is instrumental in bringing Children First Groton together. So with community partners and Groton, this has been a program for years that has really serviced our early childhood and our early learners. So that's really a relationship that they meet on a regular basis. So that's why we're thinking if we can go to the children and make it easier for the parents, I think that's a win.
And Susan touched on the assessment tools that we will be using, the Brigance and the preschool language scale, which are all standardized measures, which are normed. And we also will consider additional data. We do have a fine motor activity, concepts of print, letter identification and sounds, and also preschool teacher input, which is really important for students who are coming from a preschool program, whether in district or out in the community.
We also do parent input. I know that we do
Parent input
have
as well,
a
yes.
parent sheet too. The parents will fill out to help us understand their child better.
And the last part, just going back to Mr. Thomas's point, again, just following accommodations that are in a child's IEP when assessing a student, as well as, getting consultation from any of our EL teachers. If we do have English language learners, partnering with our EL teachers to ensure that we are assessing students appropriately. All right, so the last slide is just our timeline. We wanted to give you a picture in terms of our rollout. Lauren Cassini and I and Susan and Denise and Rebecca Bayes, we've had a lot of meetings, just really and truly putting this thoughtful timeline and process together. Time is ticking, and we really want to ensure that parents have this information and that we're able to assess students earlier than late, not later, but earlier, so that we can have all of the information that we need before the end of the year to really talk about classroom makeup and also plan for the 24-25 school year. In terms of any families moving into the district, over the summer. We have the very last bullet says summer of 2024. So we definitely left space for any families moving into the district to give them that opportunity to be assessed and considered for early entrance.
And so we really want to get, started with really presenting to you all and to, continue collaborating with the elementary principals and administrators and our fabulous team that has worked together to create this. So the kindergarten teachers, the preschool teachers, the speech language pathologists, they've been instrumental in developing this program, and I see some are online, some are in the room. And it's really been such a success story for Groton, and it's taking care of like 17, 18 kids per year. And for next year with this rollout, it'll help with the implementation of this, and it will take care of more kids and get them ready for kindergarten.
Any questions? Ian?
In regards to the summer 2024 and the transient or the late entries, is there also some thought for like mid-year or mid-school year entries, like transfer students coming in with the military after September? That maybe, is there going to be like a rolling admission type model to this, pre-K and the transitional K?
So the state has said that we can actually establish cutoffs. And so that's not something that we've discussed yet, but it's something that we can definitely note and discuss at a later date. We just really want to get as many students as early as possible, but I do understand that we have a very transient population. So that's something that we can potentially consider in terms of a process after the school year starts.
And we have a very active team that works on enrollment and registration. Like I said, we've had 750 kids coming in and sometimes 650 leaving in one given year, as many as that out of a sample size of 4,500. So we are very used to assessing kids right as they get in, no matter when they come to us. Mm-hmm. And the program that we have in place, we always leave a couple seats for that reason. Mm-hmm. So, and they fill up by the end of the year, but we do leave some space. And I imagine having one in each of the schools like we're proposing will also give us that flexibility too. That was a great question.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely would encourage an open door type policy when it comes to military transfers, because they're not in control of that.
I understand that myself. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking for myself, given our large military population, I agree. It should be left open and flexibility for that. Unless the state puts in some sort of guidelines, I would not want to see us institute any kind of cutoff. That's just me. Adrian?
I'm just wondering, so we'll be using assessments to determine whether you're going to accept kids into the program? Is that the plan?
For kindergarten.
Yes.
Or into the transitional kindergarten?
So, thank you for asking that question, just to kind of differentiate. So in terms of transitional kindergarten students, essentially, we will still screen students for transitional kindergarten, but that's going to be more so of like an open door policy until we've reached our, until we can't, fit any more students in. In terms of the early entrance criteria, we have to determine if students are developmentally appropriate and ready for the rigor of kindergarten. So that is something that we are still finalizing in terms of our assessment criteria. But we have a beautiful, option for parents, because I think a lot of the angst is going to be the fact that, their child won't be able to come to school. So in essence, we will have an answer for, parents with transitional K, where they'll be able to come to school for a full day program and get ready for kindergarten.
Along with pre-K and along with our program that we have in special education for preschool. So I feel like we've got a lot of options on the table for families, and we want to make sure that it's the best fit for the child, whatever they are.
One other consideration is that next year is a transition year for us as we implement this new legislation. So next year there will be a group of children with birthdays from September to January who will not be eligible for kindergarten. So we will have teachers that will need to be deployed, in other words, to other positions, because the following year, 25-26,
we'll have students with all 12 months of birthdays, so our kindergartens will be back to full capacity.
Yeah. Can I also ask, I mean, are we expecting that the amount of space we're going to have in transitional kindergarten is going to be enough for everyone that applies, or do we have any idea on that?
I do believe it is, because looking at our numbers this past year, over years, it's about a third of our population. So we were expecting like 4 or 5 FTEs that could be used for transitional K, which really should secure in every building the number of kids that would be eligible by their age for transitional K.
All right.
Yeah.
Dean?
So would you say that TK is closer to kindergarten or closer to pre-K?
It's right in between.
It's
a
literally
little
in
bit
between.
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So we have students who are on the older end of 4 years old, and they'll be turning 5 while they're in TK. So similar to our current TK program, our current TK program teacher, Meg Walker, she uses the early learning and developmental standards, which is more on the preschool pre-K side of things, but then she will go into the actual Common Core for kindergarten, the earlier side of the Common Core for kindergarten, to get students ready for what they're going to need first day of kindergarten, if that.
And especially now that we're really doing the deep dive with science of reading and making sure that the phonemic awareness is covered, and using the University of Florida model, she does do the phonics as well. So I would say it leans more that way when it's coming to literacy, getting them really super ready.
Yeah, I was just sort of curious. I thought, okay, so transitional K, TK, is it going to be sort of just pre-K2, in which case the kids are, just the motor's running, but the car isn't going anywhere, so to speak? Or is it essentially kindergarten with another name, and that's how we get around the law? It's not kindergarten; it's something else, but it's kindergarten.
And just to clarify, so the state handed down these guidelines over the summer. They gave the ability to give an assessment, but they didn't dictate the assessment. So you have developed the assessment tools that we're going to use, and those have now been determined? Or is that still a work in progress?
So yes, essentially the kindergarten screening tools that have been used in the past to assess students, day one or before they actually enter kindergarten, those are the assessment tools that the kindergarten team will use, in addition to the preschool language scale that will be done by our speech and language pathologists, which really just assess students' language and how clearly they speak, just to make sure that they're on the right track in terms of their development. So essentially, yes, we have the majority of our system together and ready to go. There are just a few, few items that we have to finalize as it relates to what that criteria or cutoff is going to be to determine if a student can be granted early entrance into kindergarten.
Okay. Well, thank you for all that hard work and getting a whole program together with such short notice.
Yeah, and just to answer Mr. Antipas's question, the TK is technically considered preschool. We can't consider it kindergarten because of the age requirement for kindergarten.
Of course. Thank you.
And I just want to thank my team for putting together
Jay, I
the
have a
presentations
question.
tonight. We have Katie Van Ness, our supervisor here, supporting us, and Ms. Lauren Cassini, our student data manager. So thank you.
And Beverly has a question?
Thank you, Jay. Are the students that are going to be in the TK, are they automatically going to first grade? Or do you have a way to test them to see if they're ready to go to first grade? Is this a way to get around the state law?
So actually, Beverly, that's a great question, because we've had TK now for 4 years. Typically, they get super ready for kindergarten, and we have great success. They have great success in kindergarten. We've been really monitoring and watching what's happening. There are a handful, like maybe over the past 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 kids who might be able to go into first grade. So you're right, there's a lot of assessment that goes on every day in a classroom, but we are monitoring how they're doing, so we can determine that. But typically, they're ready for kindergarten after TK.
They are, okay.
And just wanted to let you know, there is a website, and I've put it in my School Matters, is going out again. I think their next step is to really get parents on board, but we wanted to present this proposal to you first before we gave out any further information. But there is online, on the website, we're asking and encouraging parents, and I think we probably need another parent square to go out to fill in a survey for us, just so that we get what families are saying to us, so we get that feedback, and then maybe do a focus group at each of the schools to talk to parents, so that they have the information. We've kind of used Stanford as a model because they kind of started doing this work last month or so.
November.
Oh, November,
Yeah.
even better. We were both there.
Oh, Susan, one last question. Do we need to hire any additional teachers, or do we have enough teachers because the enrollment in kindergarten was going to go down, and with the TK classes now, we have enough staffing?
So it's cost neutral, Beverly. We keep our teachers and their classrooms, and they transition to a transition K teacher for the year. That's what we're anticipating. And then when we need more kindergarten teachers, we have those highly qualified kindergarten teachers to be able to do kindergarten. Unless we see something else in the future in our crystal ball that could afford us more universal pre-K or something that has a TK to it. So, but that's for the future. Right now, I'm just dealing with this problem and trying to solve it and really give our families lots of opportunities.
Years ago, when I was on the board years ago, Beth Janikopoulos and we tried to get K to support this, to change kindergarten start date to September 1st. But at that time, they were not supporting that change in the start age. So I have to say, I'm glad they finally did change the start age.
I think it's good legislation too, Beverly, but I want to be able to take care of the needs of these early learners. Thank you.
Just a quick question. You said the state didn't have any guidelines, I guess, or like the program for assessments.
Yes.
But did they issue any sort of guidance in general, like resources to touch on, or other models, just like general, like hints and?
In terms of the assessment process?
Yeah. The assessment.
They've given us very soft guidelines, but nothing concrete. It's pretty much, districts are going to pretty much create their own system and assessment.
A lot of people are
process.
collaborating, and a lot of people have used the Brigance because of its scientific nature.
Right.
So, and because we've had screeners before in all districts for kindergarten, we're kind of relying on that good work that we've done in the past.
Well, thank you very much, and it'll be interesting to see how things roll out.
And I
across the
believe
state.
Adrian had a,
Oh, it was just about the budget, which
Okay.
sounds like it's budget neutral.
Susan,
Okay.
do any other school districts have this TK program?
No, but they're all very interested. So we have some visitors coming to see us. It used to be something that we had a pre-first when I was principal at Stepney School. So we have had half steps along the way when we felt like kids weren't really ready to make that full move either into kindergarten or first grade. So we've done things like this in the past.
all right, again, thank you, ladies. My understanding is Dave
I'm going to do
with us?
Dave's.
Okay,
We
you're
do
going to
have-
do the
yeah,
report,
we
okay.
do have- So we're moving on to Director of Finance report. He was not able to be here with the weather issues at his home. He had things to take care of, but he gave me good footnotes. So we'll start with the object code summary. And some of the bullet points for the object code summary is this past month, we spent $1.6 million, or 2% of the overall budget. As I've talked to you before, we've done as much encumbrance as we can, so it's really limiting us with the spending. We're monitoring it very closely. This month, our large expenditures were $720,000 for special ed tuition obligations, $646,000 on salary and wages that are not typically encumbered, like substitutes, part-time staff, and non-certified aides. All the others are taken care of all to the end of the year, so we don't have to worry about that. And our significant remaining expenditures for the year include the health insurance claims, which I'm going to be getting to in a moment, non-certified and hourly salaries, and pension costs, as well as any worker compensation claims, which would come in intermittently. So that kind of takes you through the object code. And we do look month to, last year's at this time, and we're seeing it's kind of trending very similarly. So healthcare,
Now, can Dr. Kennedy bring this up
oh,
on the screen?
we want you to see our nifty charts and graphs from the health insurance dashboard, which has been created by Dave Flag, our new business director. And we do have concerns. We've had some high months, since the start of the year. And this year was $1.28 million. We had a month before that was high as well in August. September came down a little bit to 800,000, so we're just looking at the trending of that health care. So enrollment's down 3% from the same period last year, but the average enrollment is down 7.3% over the last fiscal year. So looking period to period and then over the fiscal year. Claim costs, October 23 was that 1.28 million, and they're up 64% from September 2022. So we do have concerns about these costs being escalated. Fiscal year-to-date claims cost up to 39%, and claim costs, day-to-day claims under 50,000 have decreased 1%, but those midterm claims, which are 50,000 to 200,000, which were bigger ticket items, have increased 37%. So I don't know if that was holding off on certain surgeries or cancer treatments or whatever it is, but they're definitely dealing with larger healthcare issues. Our initial renewal meeting for FY25 is being held December 20th, so this week, which will be the initial basis for the FY25 budget. So we're really trying to secure that. And last year, this board really did take some of the excess from the health savings account, and it's kind of hovering around the corridor, and you really have to be careful with that corridor because you need that in case of emergency. So with those, taking of those funds, we're kind of feeling it now, so we're just being really careful. And then finally, the utilities dashboard. Again, consumption across all three utilities are running in parallel with the prior year, which, they were high then, they're still high now. And the next 90 days of winter weather will give us a better indication of utilization and our ability to hit our budget. So we'll be monitoring that carefully. I guess rain is better than snow and 50 degrees is better than 20. But I would not want another day like today. Any other questions that we have?
Any questions on the insurance reserve or the energy dashboard? Ian?
Oh, or not necessarily specifically on these, but just overall with the budget. We spoke a while back about having an expandable PDF version of the document electronically
Right.
as a complement to the paper document that we receive.
So
when it
are
comes
you
time.
talking about for when we're doing our monthly object code? Or you're talking about for when we get ready for the budget? Because you'll definitely have
throughout the whole budget process.
The whole budget process,
Yes.
you're going to have the expandable.
Right, so we'd be able to go down and drill down on object codes to see,
Absolutely.
anticipated spending and
Yep.
also historical, actual spending from previous budgets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we've also asked that, the materials include the way that it's been presented in the past, so that people who are used to seeing it that way can also make their, but we're going to overlay with Dave's new ideas about how to present the data. And I'm hoping that he'll get into more about that at the finance meeting tomorrow night.
All right, I look forward to it.
Yep, about how he wants to present that data.
And then Director of Building and Grounds, he's had a very busy day. We were on the phone at 4 a.m. and also with the Chief of Police early on.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I just have a couple items to report on tonight. So the first item is the Fitch High School LED upgrade project that's been going on. They're wrapping that up now. They've been working out in the garage area and should be done with that by the end of the week, and certainly not later than the end of the winter break. So they're planning on wrapping up this week on that. The Groton Middle School Field Light Project, I was just informed that we have FFA approval for the poles, so that's a good thing. And they will be moving forward with scheduling of erecting those poles in the short term. And that project should be wrapping up by the end of the calendar year as well. And the Mystic River and the Groton Middle School solar projects are wrapping up and completed. We've had some inspections. We have one more inspection to do, and that will be done. I think earlier, maybe a month ago, it was reported that the benefit of these projects was not going to be substantial, but I think somebody put a decimal point somewhere where it didn't belong, because I'm told now that by the Green Bank that this should supply us, this should provide us with 20 to 25% of the usage in those two buildings. So that's quite a bit different than the 2% that I was told about 2 months ago.
And the next step will be Charles Barnum new roof and solar panels.
That
It would be
we're
great
working
to
on
have
with
them
the
everywhere.
architect presently, yeah.
Yeah, that could help us.
Also, I'm working with Project O on a pergola for Charles Barnum School, which will be essentially an outdoor classroom with a whiteboard and so on and so forth. That project we just started that with them last week, and that will be moving forward shortly. Met with the excavator this morning to plan out how we're going to, actually it was just after the rain, so it was late morning, how we're going to go about getting that project done. And of course, we in our department are gearing up for our winter break projects. Unfortunately, this year is one of the shorter winter breaks. It's only 4 days, so we're going to be working on some things in the culinary arts department and hopefully get to a couple of things over at Kolnaski too. But the culinary arts is the #1 project that we'll be working on. Installing some new sinks, 3-bay sinks that they want over there.
With regard to the solar projects, Sam, we had talked about how it isn't going to be the most visible in terms of the panels necessarily, but could we increase the visibility by putting some kind of a display panel in the lobby as people come into the building to see what it's generating historically and maybe, currently?
Yeah, we talked to the installer last week, I believe it was last week, about some sort of display somewhere so that the students could see how we're benefiting by this, and hopefully somewhere where the public would see it as well. So we're working on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be a nice addition to it. Are there any other questions for Sam about facilities?
Yeah. In regards to the, I'd just like to get a sense of where we are with the field house project and also overall the athletic fields, the bleachers. Are we making any moves towards getting ADA compliance with accessibility to those?
That's all within the hands of the field, is it the field task committee, field task force that's put together by the town?
We did keep it on our CIP, though, to make it visible to the town that that's a priority. But that's something that I think would cause bonding, but we have added that to the CIP.
Because of the expense, the field house was $37 million, I believe, and the bleachers were millions of dollars as well. So those would have to be bonded projects, so they're not eligible for CIP. But the town manager is aware of that, and of course, we submitted it through the CIP project so that they are well aware of it.
So it's been submitted through the CIP project, but it's
Yeah,
process?
it won't be considered as a CIP project because of the value of, or the cost of the projects.
So is it going to be considered at any point?
Not as a CIP, no. It will have to be a bonded project by the town, so I believe that a town building committee would have to be formed for one, and
the
we
task
still
force
have,
would
we
have
still
to
have
push
the
it through.
task force that's still working on that, so it's got to come through essentially Parks and Rec and that field task committee.
So we're looking at Parks and Rec, Athletic Fields Task Force, and the Town Building Committee? Is that the Permanent School Building Committee we're talking
Yeah,
about?
they're not active presently.
So that's a lot of moving parts to get coordinated.
Right.
Though I did see they're holding a meeting on this Thursday. I just haven't seen whether the agenda's been published yet.
For the field
Is that
committee?
the permanent school building? Unless that's a mistake on the calendar. The town calendar is showing a meeting this Thursday.
Okay, I haven't seen that yet.
You
I'll
should
check.
follow up on that.
And is there any way that we as a Board of Education can take some sort of leadership role in this?
We do have an RTM, Town Council, City Council liaison group with the Board of Ed, and that is really a good time to bring those kind of issues to the table and say, how do we get these things moving? You know, there's a whole vintage side of Fitch. I did a walkthrough with, some folks, and I think maybe getting people out to the wing and seeing some of the things that we're looking at that could really be supported, including the fields.
Right.
It's, something that we could orchestrate and get more information and have people like taking a look at it.
So that could be the leadership role that we do take as a body, to invite people to go on a field trip, so
Yeah,
to speak? And
that's what I would love to do.
walk about the facilities, yeah.
I'd
Yeah.
like to start with you all and take you.
I would love to. One of the things I've noticed, like working with a marching band, traveling around a lot, is that, and Fitch's geography actually would lend itself well to this, is that as far as ADA compliance, there's ways that some schools have built their, wheelchair and mobility assistance access points into the top of the bleachers off the hill that's behind the bleachers. And so that would take a lot of reconfiguring, but it's all right there. If you look at the way Fitch is set up, the hill's right behind it, and I think with, that could be a low-cost approach. There's not a lot necessarily it's a little bit less than having to build elevators and other options that I've seen in other schools. So I would welcome a chance to be part of taking a leadership role on that.
I think one of the issues that came up at the Athletic Fields Task Force is there was a proposal to flip the field, and therefore there's a concern about building new things that will be changed by flipping the field. But again, that's something that went to the task force, and now I understand is at Parks and Rec, and ultimately the town will have to bond for.
Yep, understood, yeah, so I mean, again, a lot of moving parts.
A lot of moving parts,
So, yeah,
yeah.
it would,
Yeah.
but seeing as how it's primarily used as a school facility, I think there's a natural sense that it could, that we would, as a body, I guess I should say, could take the lead on that and try to herd the cats, so to speak.
Right, yeah, I think we tried to publicize it through the channels and even adding it to this CIP, but then we were told that it exceeds the guidelines of any CIP process, so.
Understood.
Yep.
All right. More research to follow, I guess.
Yep.
I just have a question with the Fitch water leak. I believe that originally insurance was going to pay for part of that, and it was supposed to cost us $25,000. Was that the understanding of how that went through? I noticed that there wasn't any, that we were paying the full thing in the most recent budget.
Our deductible is $25,000 per event. So that was originally the expense. I'd have to talk to Mr. Flag, our business manager, about what is the latest on that.
I think the insurance company was trying to figure out what was the catalyst for the leak, because they're very, they have guidelines for when they can meet the deductible. So I think that was the process we were in communicating about, or trying to figure out what was
Yeah, we sent them information. I haven't seen a response since we sent that information to the insurance company last week.
It was kind of like a day like today, where there was a lot of water and it came into the building.
Have there been any other leaks in that area?
Not to the extent that we had on that particular day. But you can imagine that today with the winds blowing, they're not necessarily roof leaks. Sometimes water blows in ventilators and other areas that it normally wouldn't with the winds. So we were chasing down a lot of water drippings, let's say drippings as opposed to leaks, but to determine where they were coming from today, both at the high school, the middle school, and a couple of the elementary schools, newer buildings.
If there are no other questions, then we'll move on to committee reports.
Actually, one more.
Yep.
Just as far as like water fountains and I know that a few years ago there's a plan to replace systematically a lot of the water fountains and pipes that had some lead in them. And how are we doing on all that?
Which we finished at that time, and as Portia pointed out earlier, we did add another bottle filler, filtered water system fountain down by the athletic, or down by the gyms, in the foyer and the gyms.
Right. And is there still testing going on a semi-regular basis?
We haven't, about every 4 or 5 years we've been doing it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have committee reports, and we have a report from policy. Policy?
Sorry. Yes, we're bringing for our first reading, policy P5117, and it's on elementary placement, and it clarifies and defines the ways in which the student can be entered into various of our schools.
Okay. Curriculum did not meet since the last meeting, am I correct? Okay. Finance and facilities, we met on November 14th at 6 p.m. We discussed revenue. There was a document attached to the minutes showing the revenue that comes into the district collected versus budgeted, and how the excess revenue collected over the budget revenue goes to the town's general fund. We discussed the fiscal '24 financial challenges. That basically is the document we also reviewed earlier this evening. And Sam discussed the emergency facility repairs, the water damage at Mystic River as well as at Fitch. And Sam also brought us up to date on the Fitch High School LED project, the solar project, and that the footings had arrived for the turf and softball fields. And this committee will meet again tomorrow night, room 11, central office, 6 p.m. Communications.
Communications did not meet this month.
Okay, thank you. Negotiations, at the end of this meeting, we will actually be meeting to discuss the proposed contract with our very valued paraprofessionals. They have ratified it on their side, and now it's in our court to ratify it. Our Learn representative is not here. Oh, and by the way, the discussion about the contract will be an executive session. It's anticipated, however, the vote will be in public. Town Council RTM Board of Ed Liaison has not met. AGSA, GEA?
No, but we have one coming up. I don't see Beth in the room, but we do have one coming up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Groton Scholarship, I believe they started last month. And so we will be appointing someone to attend those meetings. Athletic Fields has not met in a few months. It's my understanding they sort of discharged their report. I don't know if the town council has a further charge for them or not. So we're waiting to hear. Trails.
Trails Committee met about a week and a half ago. Nothing transpired that affected Groton Public Schools.
Okay. And Library.
Library meets on Wednesday. I will say that our two student representatives from Fitch and Marine Magnet are members of the Aluminum Falcon robotics team, and had a wonderful fundraiser and stuffed us with pancakes a week or so ago.
Great. Thank you. State Council on Educational Opportunities, that meets just twice a year, so.
This is the first one I've ever missed, but I was ill and I could not attend. But I'm sure Susan was there and could speak.
I was there, and we do have some minutes. We usually talk about state legislation. This is a meeting where military superintendents meet about 4 or 5 times a year. And Groton usually has a good showing. Ledyard is there, Norwich, New London. So we really meet, together to really talk about the military child and the compact that is there. And so that state meeting usually kind of dovetails with our meeting a couple times a year. So we talked a lot about the compact and some of the changes that I wish they had when I was a military child, moving 8 places in 12 years. So it's good.
Where do we get that information?
So I can send that out.
That would be great, thank you.
Would you be able to send that to the whole board?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next item is the consent agenda. And now, all matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. Points of clarification are allowed. So I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Seconded.
Second? Okay. All those in favor of
There's a
the...
question here.
One
Yes.
question. I just, I'm not sure what the exact process would be, parliamentary-wise, but I just want to abstain from item number 1, since I was not present at that meeting.
Okay. Understood.
Jay,
Any other? Yes.
who seconded the motion, please?
That was Matthew.
Oh, I thought Matthew made the motion.
No, Dean. made it.
Dean moved
Dean,
it.
okay,
and
thank
Matthew
you.
seconded.
That's all I need to know.
Thank you, Joan.
I think Matt was going to, but I stole it from him.
He beat him.
So, are there any other points of clarification? All in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And any abstentions?
I'll do that one abstention on item number 1
Okay,
for the minutes.
okay. All right, so that passes. I would like to thank Alexa Britton for donating a $25 gift certificate to Paul's Pasta to be used by the Mentor Program, Dave Borges, who donated $345 to be used by the Mentor Program, Barry Ryan, who donated a $25 gift certificate to Ryan's Pub to be used by the Mentor Program, and Catherine Kolnaski, PTO, which has donated $345 to be used by the Mentor Program. Under new business, let's see. Yep, we have our first reading of policy P5117. And Ian, would you like to read the motion for that? And again, this is a first reading, so this will be open to debate, clarification, could be sent back to committee. This is not a final acceptance.
All right, I move to approve the policy P5117, elementary K through 5, school placement as a first reading.
And do I hear a second?
Sure, second.
Okay. So, any discussion about policy P5117.
I can kind of orient you. The way we do policy is we keep the black print for what has worked, what we had in the past, and the green is new language, the red is what's being exited out. And this policy was really in need of update because we now have intra-district magnets. So it's not just neighborhood schools anymore. Actually, our neighborhoods are even larger. Our districted zones are larger. And then students have the opportunity to go into a lottery and have choice. So we wanted to make sure the language was very transparent about how that process or that policy would work.
Just a quick, I guess, question of privilege, or would we be able to put this document up on the big screen so anyone watching can follow along?
Dr. Kennedy, do you have the ability to bring this policy up?
Jay, I have a question when you get a chance.
Sure. I'd like to also just make a quick notation, because there has been a change in the way that our agendas are created, that if anyone has access to the internet and goes to bring up our agendas, all of these attachments, you can click on them and bring them up and read them as well. And Beverly, your question?
Yes. Under where it says attendance zones shall be established with the consideration of, but not limited to the following, why did you eliminate educational need of the students?
Do you remember? Regardless of whatever school you're
Laura,
at, your educational needs of the student are taken care of, so that wouldn't be a factor in selecting the school or being placed in a school.
Were you able to hear that, Beverly?
Yeah, I heard a little bit of it.
And if we have any other questions, I don't know if maybe Ms. Cassini could go to this table, just in case anything else comes up.
Quick question. Do we have, as far as the attendance zones or the proposed attendance zones, do we have maps?
Yes, we
That
do,
could- would
and
you
we've
look at
gotten
this
them
graphically?
updated. And I can actually show them, they're online, but we actually had a group do that because what had happened was when we consolidated our schools and built the new schools, we really wanted students to kind of stay with their peers. So the students from Cloudchester and S.B. Butler went to the Mystic River School, and then the Thames River was really most of what closed down with Pleasant Valley and Mary Morrison. But then giving options to be in the lottery really caused a lot of movement. So it's really a pretty cool color-coded dotted map that shows you how we have kids going to Northeast Academy from all parts of the district, just like we have. And that's really caused this equity and balance in our schools socioeconomically and racially. Northeast has a little more work, but they are up to close to 40% free and reduced lunch, and our average is 54, so they're closer. And everybody else is within 10%, so, or on the money.
And-
So we've done a good job with that.
Those maps are on the website, you said?
They should be on the website.
Whereabouts would I find those?
I don't believe the newest version has been, we are meeting with her tomorrow to
Okay.
finalize, so the
Okay.
newest up-to-date version is not on the web yet, but there are several places you can look to find out specific street names and which school is associated with those street names on the website, under the registration portal.
This could be a real good topic, though, I'd love to bring back to you during a COW. and
Yeah,
show you.
that'd be great. And
Yeah.
I don't know if we could include the maps in the package to follow up. It'd be great to be able to look at it visually. If somebody wanted to do a quick search just to find the previous draft of the maps that exist now,
Yep.
what would be the most effective way or the most efficient way to get there?
So you could look on the Groton Public Schools website under the
New students tab.
under the New Students tab. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think it would be fine for us to send the link to the board,
Yeah.
just for your review.
Sure.
We do have the link, it's just not publicized yet, because we are looking
Yeah,
to
we could do
finalize
that.
that.
I'll send you the link.
Thank you.
Okay, so you're going to send the link of the draft map?
Right.
Okay, perfect.
And I understood you to make, and I understood you to have said that those maps may be incorporated in the policy. Is that the intent?
I don't think they'll be incorporated in the policy because, but they would be on our website. So
Okay.
it's really a good way for parents to see where students are going and for the community to see.
But I don't think it would hurt to have some explanatory wording added to this policy saying that the current attendance zones can be found, and with a hyperlink. The one great thing about our policies, that some people may remember the old policy book that we used to lug around, that weighed 10 or 15 pounds. You can now go to the Groton Public Schools website under Board of Ed. The policies are all online, hyperlinked, searchable, and so we could embed the link right there.
And that might be also good in the regulations. Policy is what is the job of the board in, outlining policy, and the staff will work with the board to make sure we capture all the legislation that's happening mostly. And then regulations are under the superintendent's purview to make sure that we follow the policy, and it's like our marching orders and how we're doing it. But board likes to see both, and I think it's good when we have both to share it at the same time, so you also have the regulations. But I think what you've suggested would be a really good idea in regulations, because then you could change it as it happened. If there were any changes, you could, make sure you're doing that.
So you would just click to a link and that would take you to the most recent attendance zone maps?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay,
Do that.
that'd be great, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. A transfer request may be denied if a school requested does not have the appropriate programming needs. Would that be like if a student had an IEP in the school that they wanted to go to, didn't have a professional for that or something like that?
Well, it would be more in the case of these specialized programs we've talked about, like at Mystic River, we have the ABA program for autism, so if there is a specialized program for a child that needed that, then they would go to that school for that, because that's where it's housed. But as far as other IEP, we have resource teachers, we have, all kinds of special education program, but there are a couple that are really specific that needed to be together with all of the, support systems in place.
So at this point, I'll call for a vote. I just want to remind the new members that this does not become policy with this vote. This is the first reading, and between now and the time that the
Hey,
second
Jay, I
reading
have a question.
Sure, Beverly. Go ahead. I don't know if you can hear me,
Can
Beverly.
you hear us, Beverly? It said.
Oh, yeah, now I can.
Okay, good.
My question has to do with under the transfer, let me see, the transfer request. Yeah, under the transfer request, the second paragraph, it says in extenuating circumstances outlined in R 5117. And what would they be? I can't find that. I can't find the circumstances.
Oh, okay, so that's referencing the regulation.
Yeah, and I'm looking in the regulations and I don't find the accentuating circumstances. I
Did we
could be
label
missing
it
it,
that?
but I don't see it.
So it's not listed in the policy, it was
It's in the regulations, but I'm looking at the regulations right now.
Page 3.
So if you
Thank you.
scroll down through the regulations.
So page 3. And,
There was really only one extenuating circumstance that stood out, and that was a family who may have moved outside of the lottery window and was hoping to go to their new attendance zone. That particular school, should there be space available. I think that was the purpose of the extenuating circumstances.
so if they move during the school year to another side of town and want to go to that school, it really depends on looking at enrollment to make sure that that can happen that
Right.
way. And one of
During
the things
mid-year.
we talked about is really allowing students to be able to also stay in the school that they're in, whether they were a magnet school student or whether they were districted there, that they should be able to stay if there is a move and they want to stay. So the less transient they can be, and, you know, if that's their desire. Now, if they move to the other side of town and want to move there, you know, we definitely want to get them into that school, but we have to look at enrollment too.
Right.
Jay?
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
wanted to just-
Beverly, does that answer your question?
Sorry.
I really couldn't hear, so
I'm
I
sorry.
guess it will do. I couldn't hear.
So
I
the,
couldn't hear clearly. I can hear, but I can't hear clearly what people are saying.
okay.
But that's okay, don't worry about it.
The exception is in the regulation.
On page 3. And it has to do with, like a mid-year transfer, that it would have to be something that we could do based on enrollment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify something about regulations. While they do fall under the jurisdiction of the superintendent, they do appear in our policy manual. So when I chaired that committee, I made sure that everything that was in here
Matched.
matched what, not only what we believed,
Right.
but everything was grammatically correct.
She was very good at that.
And we'll continue to
We
ask.
will continue.
Ask for your grammatical expertise.
You're going to be assigned to every committee. as the
I know.
Just one other question. This is sort of like a, more of a broad perspective. We've been a intra-district magnet school. We've had that model in place for about 3-4 years now?
Yep.
Yeah.
2021. Yep.
Okay. Have we, or is there, have we done any sort of reflective study on how it's working out, how everyone's feeling about it, you know, overall impact? You know, I'm just curious because, you know, just, again, not saying I'm advocating for one side or the other, but I'm just curious to know, because we moved from a model where, you know, schools were a bit of a hub of the community where they were placed.
Right.
And, you know, they worked as social hubs as well as you know, education centers. So, you know, with the magnet school approach, that there's a significant change there where we now have a more complex busing, you know, schedule.
Yep.
And we also have
Hey,
situations.
Jay, can we stick to talking about the policy?
So-
And then the
Okay.
team can make that referral?
So,
Yes, I
so
think
I guess my
Look
question
I think
is.
you're asking
how we
for a
do with the
referral.
Right.
magnet schools,
My question
the
is, like,
district magnet
do we
schools?
have, or do we have a document that is going to, as we look at placement and that philosophy, is there any sort of
Jay.
document to compare and contrast to, like,
Yeah. I don't
other
think
ideas?
there isn't one, but I think what I'm hearing you saying is we want a referral to study that question.
Okay, yeah,
So,
I guess
yeah.
if it hasn't been done, I guess then maybe that is
Yeah,
what I'm asking
yeah.
for, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
thank you.
So
Very
I'm
good.
not sure if this does answer part of your question. I'm not sure I'm following exactly, but yes, we are beginning to look at and make sure that the initial intention of my understanding of what prompted the intra-district magnet school was, 1, racial balance, 2, giving children opportunities to explore what they might be interested in. So beginning tomorrow, actually, so we've been collecting some of the data that we do have available to us at this point. Tomorrow, we are meeting as a steering committee to start really looking at that closely and look at what pieces are we missing to answer those questions so that we can begin to compile, I think, where you're going with this, which is, are we doing what we intended to do, and is it successful?
Precisely, yes, that would be great.
So we're going there,
All
we're
right,
getting there.
And what, that's a steering committee meeting?
Yes, it's a magnet steering committee.
Okay. And that's a inside administration meeting, or is that,
Well, it's comprised of more than just administration. There are strategically picked people so that we have a wide perspective. I found this on the web. Within the district.
okay,
Okay.
Within the contracted district.
Okay.
great, thank you.
So again, as we make this vote, It's not final. If you have any other questions, this can be amended at a future meeting. If you have questions in the interim, they can be submitted, any suggestions or modifications. So, hearing no other questions, all in favor of the first reading to approve policy P5117, elementary K-5 school placement as a first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? So the first reading passes. The next item, Rob, would you be willing to read the motion for item number 2?
Motion to recognize January 18th, 2024 as National Maintenance Day and to direct Superintendent of Schools to send a letter of appreciation to the maintenance staff.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Second.
Andrea seconded.
Who was first?
Rob moved it,
Good.
and
Thank you,
Andrea
Robert.
seconded it. Yep. So is there any discussion on this? Or did you have anything you wanted to say about our?
Well, our maintenance men are, like, first and foremost, along with our custodians, in days like this, really at our buildings early in the morning and helping to make sure, like you said, checking all the puddles and making sure that we don't have a flood. So, but they work all year long. So they're there for everything, so.
And I would like to add that they have saved my little soul many, many times.
I'm definitely in favor of this motion. I'm just curious to know, but we do have, the maintenance workers in the school district have their own contract with the district?
They are part of a union that is made up of the IT department, the maintenance, custodians, and even secretaries.
Okay. All very essential services.
All very essential services, right.
When is that contract coming up for negotiation?
I felt like we just did it, but it's probably in another year or two, right? Yeah. 2025, yeah.
2025.
Yeah.
Okay, very well. Well, as much as I'm in favor of this, I think, if we're going to vote for this, then we should definitely be thinking about that upcoming negotiation as well.
Yeah.
And making proper,
And every month, we
plans.
usually celebrate one of our groups or another,
Mhm.
so,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Any discussion? Yes, Beverly. Beverly? Did you have a question about this item?
No, I don't.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so that motion passes. The next item is discussion and possible action regarding the ratification of the contract with our Groton paraprofessionals. So I will entertain a motion that members of the Groton Board of Education go into executive session to discuss the proposed contract between the board and the SEIU Local 2001 CSEA Groton Paraprofessionals Chapter pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, and further that we invite Superintendent Austin and Attorney Floyd Dugas into executive session.
Second.
So that,
Unless you wanted to stay. Unless
actually, I
you wanted
entertained
to-
the motion, so you moved it.
Mhm.
And is there any second?
I'll second.
And Mr. Thomas seconded. So Joan, that was Andrea moved, and Ian Thomas seconded. So all in favor of going into executive session, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? So we're in executive session, and when we come back, we will have our vote in public. Thank you. All right, so I'm calling the meeting of the Groton Board of Education back to order. We came out of our executive session, and let's see.
9:17.
So
Thank you,
we're
Mr. Dugas.
back in session at 9:17. And Dean, would you care to read the motion for number 3?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. I move to ratify the SEIU Local 2001 CSEA Groton Paraprofessionals Chapter contract for the period of July 1st, 2023 to June 30th, 2027.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. All of those in favor of ratifying the contract with the Groton Paraprofessionals chapter, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Joan, Mr. Thomas is abstaining.
All others accepted.
And so that does pass. And I just want to say thank you to our very hardworking paraprofessionals and to Attorney Dugas for leading us through this process. Thank you very much.
Safe trip.
Okay, the last item are letters, communications, and comments by board members on meeting items and any other items within their jurisdiction. So starting with Mr. Mead, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Any communications or anything? Okay. Ms. White?
I would just like to say that I'm happy to hear, in regards to the reading program, I'm happy to hear that Hegarty and U-Fly were approved. I know I've heard from a few people that we were placed on the limited list, which means that our application was not approved, and I'm looking forward to speaking about that in the future, and I'd officially like it to be put on the list for discussion for the curriculum committee.
Yes, we will make that a referral to curriculum.
I'm going to pass for tonight.
Okay, all right. Mr. Thomas?
I definitely would, for whatever it's worth, I second Mr. Johnson's interest in discussing the curriculum item as far as literacy instruction goes. I spoke with the chair a good bit over the past couple of weeks about, in trying to get read in on the past activities of the board. And one thing that I'd like to see the board adopt as a policy would be the regular recording and publication on the Groton Public Schools YouTube channel of not just our, the committee of the whole meetings, the regular meetings, and also the subcommittee meetings. I think it would behoove us as a body to do that, not just for the sake of transparency, but also for the sake of understanding, like as far as efficiency goes. When it comes to budget deliberations and all the myriad aspects of running the school district. There's a lot that happens inside the committee, and I think it could help our committee, the whole meetings and the regular meetings run more efficiently if we're able to understand the deliberations that came to create whatever recommendation comes out of committee. And I also would, so yeah, to that end, I would like that make that a referral to the policy committee. And
Question?
yes.
Would that be policy or communications?
Mr. Thomas is requesting a referral to policy, and I would tend to agree that that would be a policy of the board.
All right. And the referral, do we have a list of all the referrals that are currently standing?
Yes, and we do need to get that out.
We have a template.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And is that going to be a regular thing that we
Yeah,
visit?
you'll get that with every packet.
With every packet?
Yeah, going forward.
All right. And I also received communications concerning the junior ROTC program in regards to the uniforms and the jackets, the outer gear for the colder weather. Like I think we should. I don't know what the process is as far as it goes to try to accommodate them now, since the budget's already been set. But I would encourage us to look at that. So maybe that's a referral to finance.
I've already opened the chain of command to talk to Terry Hinkle, our
Okay.
CO.
Very good.
So he's got a list of things for me.
All right.
Yeah, I would think that if we don't hear something soon, that we can make a referral. But I kind of would like the administration to take a look at the site budget and see what's available.
Very good. And The one other thing is, this may be jumping the agenda a little bit, but just looking at the calendar schedule, is this going to be a thing that we discuss? I noticed a lot of canceled meetings coming up in January, and I'm not sure how this got to be decided.
I think it's because of all the different budget meetings that are coming up, that we had to replace some of those ordinary meetings with budget meetings. That happens typically in January.
Right. However, it doesn't preclude that there could be a meeting added. In
Right.
fact, I mean, I wouldn't want to do it on 24 hours, but you can do it on 24 hours notice. I mean, I'd like a little more than that.
Right. Well, I guess, yeah, and again, this may be another conversation for another time, so please, if it's not appropriate to bring it up, but I'm just not, I don't believe this board was consulted on this calendar, or were we? Did that happen?
No, that was decided prior to this board taking, yeah.
So
But again, it's something that can be,
all right.
meetings can be added.
So if we add the meetings, though, would they become special meetings and therefore restricted in their agenda?
Only if I'd have to look at what was filed with the town clerk. If they're on the same date that they originally filed, then they would.
The other thing that has happened
Can we
is-
uncancel a meeting, I guess is what I'm asking? Because this was in our decision.
Post it, right?
Well,
I'm over my head.
yeah, so I'm looking at the Finance Facilities Committee meeting is canceled on the 2nd. Leave that aside for a second. The COW meeting for the 8th is canceled. In its place is the budget presentation.
Right.
Likewise, on the 16th, you see 2 committee meetings that are canceled. In its place is a special budget work session. We can discuss whether or not we should have 2 or 3 meetings in an evening, or meetings in addition to the budget work session. But I think you'll find that this is fairly typical for January. So, yeah, we can discuss it, but this is why you see these canceled meetings. It's because they were in the template, so to speak, and they're just marked as, we would have had a COW meeting, but we're canceling it because we're doing a special budget deal.
And we do that a whole year in advance. So we even had, for this new board, we had to commit to a schedule like back in the fall. And we typically used to have Monday as committee meetings. And then for some people, it worked out better for Tuesday who are on the committees. But now we're going to have new committees. So those things got adjusted because of people's schedules.
Plus, we added another committee of the whole, which we didn't have when we always had committees on Monday, and we only had 3 committees. And they could all meet on Monday concurrently. So, yeah, things have changed.
So there is a 4th standing committee now?
Right.
And that's communication?
That's correct.
Okay. And as far as committee assignments, I know there was some talk about that.
Yep, I've been discussing it with everyone individually, and once I have everything, I'll be sending out an email.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
all right. Matthew?
I spoke at a prior meeting about the reconfiguration of our academic achievement when we broke it out by ELL, by IEP, and we found out ELL for the elementary schools, we were about 80, I don't have the exact number, so just take it as 85 to 90% not meeting minimum state standards. That's the bad news. The good news is that we've identified a cohort, and the cohort's only about 45 students. It's a manageable cohort. And I don't know whether this is I'm going to be guided by you, Jay, and you, Susan, if this is a referral to the curriculum committee or if it's just purely an administrative matter. But I would love somebody to grab this bull by the horns and say, this is a group that's suffering in an ability to communicate in what is going to be their main language of this country. Not the only, but the main language of this country. And if we don't get these kids up and reading by the time they get up at elementary school, how in the blazes are they going to understand the complicated concepts, whether it's math or science or even analysis of English? So this is, to me, a crash emergency. every year we put off dealing with it is going to be another year's worth of students lost. It just is really critical to do this. I could be wrong, but that's what my heart and my mind tell me.
So I hear that you're making a referral, and we'll
Well, I'm
determine whether...
asking your counsel as to whether it's a referral or purely administration. I really don't have a bias one way or the other. I just want to see progress on it.
All right.
Do you, Susan, where would you like to see this?
So we do have a data team, and I'll actually put this on the agenda for them to examine. So a district data team.
Let's start there.
Let's start with the district
Let's
data
start
team.
there. I'm sorry.
And the school data teams are looking at this all the time, too. We do have a lot of newcomers that come, and the state law is that they have to take the SBAC test, even if they don't have the language. So that definitely impacts some of our kids.
But they're the fairy kids that we need to rescue.
Well, yeah, and you've got to teach them the language first before they can do the state test.
I'd like to have a discussion about this. I'd discuss it now, but now is not the
Yeah,
time.
no, you're right.
Thank you.
Dr. Ackerman?
I have nothing.
Okay. Though, before our next meeting, you do have an upcoming Dr. Martin Luther King
Oh, thank you.
service, I believe.
It's on the 14th of January. That's the Sunday of the Martin Luther King weekend at St. James Church in New London.
It's awesome.
At 3 in the afternoon, and there will be a reception later, and we're hoping to get the Fitch High School culinary program to do that again.
That's wonderful.
And
I'll put these as reminders in your board notes, so you have
That'd
all
be
of
great.
these dates to remember.
We appreciate all the work you do
We have
with
3
the scholars.
We have
Yes.
3 scholars from us.
Yes.
And I want to tell you that the scholars have been working at my home on Sundays, practicing for this, and it's powerful. It's powerful.
Yes.
Can I say it now?
Yes, you can say it now.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
I just wanted to say one thing
Yes.
before we
Hey,
vote.
Jay, you didn't ask me, Jay, if I had any.
Yeah, I know.
Beverly.
That's why we jumped. Beverly, did you have anything?
Yes. Sort of like Ian was saying, people have been asking me also, why aren't the Board of Ed meetings, the regular meeting, not the committee meetings, and I asked me anything about that, but the regular meetings, why aren't they televised live? And I don't know the answer to that. I didn't even know they weren't televised live, and because I'm always at the meeting. So, so that's sort of like what Ian was saying. Why aren't the meetings televised live? My other thing is I've been hearing from high school students about they're still having concerns about the vaping in the bathroom. Some students don't even want to go to the bathroom because of the vaping at the high school, and that's a problem.
I got vape
And my
detectors
other-
coming, Beverly.
Excuse me?
I got vape detectors coming from a grant, thank you to Carolyn Wilson. So as soon as they arrive, they're going in the bathrooms. And they're doing some proactive work with Carolyn Wilson to talk to kids about the problem with that.
And my third item is, in East Lyme, if you're 65 and older, they do not charge you to go to any school events. And I'd like to make a referral that we try to do that also. If you're 65 and older and you show your ID, that there's no charge to go to school events. Because a lot of the people 65 and older, they pay taxes for schools, but they don't have any children in school. So this would be a nice gesture towards them, and it's probably not gonna be a lot of people that's gonna be coming out, but I'd like to make a referral that the board discusses that.
Okay, so noted. And I just wanted to make an observation that, again, it's an honor to work with this board. The energy and passion are evident with this group, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Thank you.
And now the motion on the floor is for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Please say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.